Hello and welcome to episode 074 of the Bit Beacon broadcast. It is February 24th, 2025, and today, well, we're going to be doing a bit of the usual, but this episode itself is going to be a little different because I've only got one news topic to talk about. But before we get there, I want to talk about some purchases that have arrived this last week. I've got 3 games for PlayStation 4. And first I'm going to I'm going to talk about Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. This is a game originally launched during the PS3, Xbox 360 life cycle and was ported to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, I believe, fairly early on. It says here that this was back in 2014, so yeah, very early on in the PlayStation 4's life. I have been interested in this game for a long time. It's a urban game where there's Asian gangs and things, and there's been long talk of this game being turned into a movie, and it appears to be getting kind of closer to reality. So there's been a lot of buzz about the game and the movie and the news lately. So I was like, I need to finally play this game I've been hearing people talk about for so long. It says, you are Wai Shen, an undercover cop trying to take down the triads from the inside. The definitive edition of the award-winning open-world action-adventure, rebuilt and remastered, includes all previously available downloadable content and a wealth of new enhancements. So I think this is going to be my next game after I finish up Visions of Mana, which I'm still working on. Another game that I got. Okay, you may remember I said that I picked up Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 a few weeks ago, the Steelbook edition. I returned it. I was like, you know what? Why? I still need to play the first game first. I don't need this Steelbook. I don't need to spend $70 on a game I'm not going to get around to anytime soon, when it'll be cheaper, much cheaper eventually. So I did buy a copy of the original game, the Royal Edition for PlayStation 4. This edition comes with all the DLC on disc, except for, I believe, one of the DLCs, which just auto-downloads when you install the game. So yeah, I am excited to check this out at some point. A little pricey. I guess this game is kind of out of print, but there was a seller on eBay who had a few hundred copies, so I got it for under $30. Sealed. Sleeping Dogs. I did have to pay not too much for this one. I think it was about $12 for a really nice condition used copy. Like, it looks new. Like, this person either never played it or never touched it after taking the wrap off, but it is like a perfectly used copy. And lastly, I have an import from the UK here, and this is Ace Attorney Investigations Collection for PS4. So Capcom did this really weird. In the Americas, the ESRB rating region, you could get the Switch edition physically, but the PS4 edition was digital only. In Europe, you could get the PS4 edition physically, but the Switch edition was digital only. And then in Japan and Asia, I believe both PS4 and Switch were available physically and digitally. So just really curious why it happened this way. I have been watching this particular copy. I already own a copy of the game on Switch because I wanted to support it physically. I wanted to support the series. I wanted them to make new Ace Attorney games, because this is a collection of 3 of the older games, including one that was never originally released in the West. But I want to play these on PS4 more than likely. So I wanted to get this, and I saw that Amazon UK had like a almost 30% off deal. And it was like one of those like lightning round deals or whatever they call them. So I jumped on the opportunity to pick it up. It was, I don't know, maybe $25 or so shipped to the US, which is a pretty good deal. So yeah, I'm glad to add this one physically to my PS4 collection. As for what I've been playing, I'm still playing Visions of Mana. I was maybe a little ahead of myself last week when I said I was 3/4 of the way done with the game. They're clearly stretching out this final lap that we're doing around the world, but with some surprises and twists. Like, I thought it was just going to be like retreading of a bunch of old ground, but no, there's actually a bunch of new zones and areas I didn't know that were hidden away in the game in a way I couldn't see them beforehand. So that's been pretty cool. So the adventure is continuing, still enjoying my time with it. I am excited to kind of reach the climax and see how all of this is going to play out. I hear the ending is a bit controversial, so I'll be curious to give my take on that, hopefully next week once I've finished the game. Alright, so what's going on and what's coming up? So this last week, Gallery Nucleus and Sony Santa Monica Studios announced a God of War 20th anniversary event at Gallery Nucleus. So this is taking place on March 15th. There's going to be a panel and a developer signing. It's ticketed. There's going to be, it looked like more than 24 artists are going to have art on display. There's going to be merchandise, prints, that kinds of thing. So I imagine it's going to be mostly focused on the newer God of War stuff, but it's possible that there could, be some old stuff as well. I'm really curious to see how they're going to handle this, particularly because this is the gallery itself is available for I think a couple weeks, but the one night only stuff, they are charging people to get in $15 for the panel. I don't think I've ever seen one of their panels be that high. The panel also gets you into the signing. It's going to be limited to 160 seats or something really small like that. And then there's an opening reception that takes place afterwards that they are charging $5 to get into, but the $5 gets you back a merch credit or something like that. So yes, I have to jump on tickets for that in I think next week actually is when tickets are going to go up for sale. So fingers crossed I can get into the 20th anniversary event. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a lot of PlayStation Studios celebrating their various anniversaries lately. And Insomniac not that long ago, and now God of War as a franchise is celebrating 20. Really exciting stuff for PlayStation and, for people who live in LA and like playing video games. There's really not a better place. Since I only have one news story, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about an event I went to this past weekend, the Pokemon Go Tour Los Angeles and Pasadena. So I've kind of written a sort of reminiscence about my time there, and, I hope you enjoy. So this past weekend, I attended the Pokemon Go Unova Tour event at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Friends of the show like Ravenheart, Geocode 7, and Nintendo Boy 88 were there with me. The four of us went up there on Friday night, so we would be ready to go Saturday morning. Sadly, our original hotel reservation, which was much closer to the venue, was canceled on us a few days before the event, so we had to scramble to find something else and ended up staying in a Motel 6 one town over. It was cramped and rough to say the least. One of our party members kept the rest of us awake most of the night with their snoring. I won't name and shame, but you know who you are. Pokemon, go see a doctor about that, please. We got up around 5 a.m. on Saturday, fueled up on some McDonald's breakfast, and made our way over to the Rose Bowl. Security let us into the venue more than an hour before the event started at 9, so we were able to pick up our merch in advance. The merch included a shirt in black or white, featuring the commemorative key art, a commemorative pin, a tote bag, and a hoodie. All of these featured that graphic of Reshiram and Zekrom. I picked up a shirt and the pin. I think Ravenheart picked up one of everything. We made our way up north to the top of the golf course to start our day. With some time to spare, we stopped by one of the community areas where they had started doing trivia contests with a different pin featuring the event logo as a prize amongst some other goodies. I had to get one of those before the day was over, and in that regard, I did manage to be successful. Before I get into my personal horror story at the event, I wanted to touch on some of the event research mission. Sadly, it was incredibly short and terribly uninteresting. But that's honestly not a bad thing in my opinion. I haven't paid much attention to Professor Willow and his nonsense in ages, so the shorter, the better. I think the most interesting in-game thing was sort of a Pokestop scavenger hunt, which required us to walk around the different season-themed biomes and spin Pokestops with specific Pokemon featured on them. In the timed research tab, the 3 different missions gave hints of the 3 Pokemon you needed to find, and ultimately gave way to another set of Pokestop hunting, which rewarded us with encounters of the 3 legendary genies, Thundurus, Landorus, and Tornadus, in their normal forms. As for raids, every 15 minutes a new wave of raids would spawn and last for 10 minutes. So Kiram was present every hour, and either Reshiram or Zekrom were present in the opposite hour. Kiram occupied about 80% of the raids, so there was a lot less Reshiram and Zekrom raids each hour. I came prepared to the event with enough passes for 68 raids. I needed all 3 of these Pokemon shiny for my living dex and home, and so I set out on my quest to get all 3. The rest of our party also needed these shiny Pokemon, although I think Ravenheart already had at least one of them done before we got to the event. During the first hour, most of us got at least one of the 3 shiny. By hour 2 or 3, everybody but me had their second shiny, and they started to focus on other elements of the event aside from raiding. But I was now behind, and I had to continue to focus on raiding, so I split off from the group. Because of the way the event is laid out, there's a large group of raids in the middle of the golf course area, and another large group of raids at the top of the golf course, and it's a good 5-minute brisk walk between those 2 areas. And of course, my first shiny was Kiram, so the one that was most likely to appear in raids at the event to begin with. So for Zekrom and Reshiram, I would have to be lucky if more than 2 of them would spawn during each raid wave between the 12 or so raiding spots in these 2 areas of the golf course. So I was constantly running back and forth between the 2 areas in the hopes of nabbing my shiny. Most of the time, because of the brief 10-minute window for raids, I wasn't able to even catch the Reshiram and Zekroms that weren't shiny, so I would just flee so I could quickly make it into another raid. It took more than 60 raids before shiny Zekrom came home, just after 3 p.m. While relieved that it was finally over, I was exhausted by this point and had already walked, and at times ran, more than 12 miles that day. Still, I needed Reshiram, and at this point in the day, the final hours of Reshiram raids would start at 4 p.m. and end at the end of the event at 5 p.m. Turns out Nintendo Boy 88 still needed Reshiram too, though he hadn't been trying nearly as hard as me to get one. So at 4 p.m. we started. First wave of raids near us had 1 Reshiram raid, of course. Nintendo Boy 88 gets their shiny on the first try. I can't let it distract me though, so I start hustling up to the top where there's another raid. Nothing. We go back and forth between the 2 raid areas, doing 8 raids in total that area. As 5 o'clock hits, I've not got my shiny Reshiram. The event was over and the raids were done, but I was not going home empty-handed. I made my way over to one of the community gathering areas where attendees were still hanging out, and I just started walking up to strangers asking if any of them had an extra shiny Reshiram they would be willing to trade. It took a few minutes before I found a beautiful man who had one and was willing to consider what I had to offer. He ultimately agreed to take my shiny Raikou that I had caught back in 2019. The day was won, but at what cost to my feet insanity? I kid you not, I was ready to uninstall the game before that Zekrom showed up earlier in the day. After it was all said and done, we celebrated at my favorite restaurant in downtown Diamond Bar, Chili's. Alright, so I got the 3 shinies I guess I wanted, and I was semi-satisfied with my results for the day. But, when everyone else got all their stuff with much ease and was able to actually spend time catching and messing around with the Pokemon spawns rather than raiding, it was, overall a pretty bummer of an experience for me. That being said, if it's back next year, I will sign up for another round of masochism. Okay, we're going to jump into my one and only news story for the week. So a few months ago, NetEase closed their Japanese-Chinese hybrid studio known as Uka Studio, who developed Square Enix Visions of Mana. The studio was closed upon launch of Visions of Mana, which perplexed gamers and pundits alike. Reviews were solid. Sales estimates were out on day 1, and this was the studio's first game. What could have possibly gone wrong to close the studio so quickly? Turns out this wasn't an isolated incident. The Chinese game publisher giant NetEase is easing up on its projects, products, and foreign investments in studios outside of China and even internally. Also launching last year was their juggernaut hit, Marvel Rivals. This is a team-based hero game like Overwatch but starring Marvel characters. Even though the game has been a tremendous success, NetEase this past week fired the entire US-based portion of the development team. Steven Toledo reached out to NetEase and they issued him the following statement. We recently made the difficult decision to adjust Marvel Rivals' development team structure for organizational reasons and to optimize development efficiency for the game. This resulted in a reduction of a design team based in Seattle that is part of a larger global design function in support of Marvel Rivals. We appreciate the hard work and dedication of those affected and will be treating them confidentially and respectfully with recognition for their individual contributions. The heck does that even mean? We want to reassure our fanbase that the core development team for Marvel Rivals, which continues to be led by lead producer Wei Kong Wu and creative director Guangyun Chen in China, remains fully committed to delivering an exceptional experience. We are investing more, not less, into the evolution and growth of this game. We're excited to deliver new superhero characters, maps, features, and content to ensure an engaging live service experience for our worldwide player base. So, even if teams behind one of the most successful live service game launches in the past couple of years are being laid off, then something else must be going on behind the scenes. Reporters at Bloomberg got to work investigating what is going on behind the scenes at NetEase, and they dug up some tasty information. It turns out that the blame lies at the top, as NetEase founder and CEO William Ding, who took back control over the decision-making at the company this past year, and is charting a new course with layoffs, budget cuts, and studio closures. One humorous story from the report says Ding at one point during development was upset by the idea of paying Disney's licensing fee for Marvel characters in Marvel Rivals, so he instructed the development staff to make up new original superhero characters that had nothing to do with Marvel. Ultimately, they went back to their original idea of using Marvel characters. It's likely that without Marvel characters, that game would have launched to little or no excitement. They would have ended up like Sony with their release of Concord and had to quietly sweep it under the rug. Another big successful title from them this past year is Eggy Party, which became a massive hit in China. The game is essentially a Fall Guys clone, which I don't believe ever had a release in China. Ding is also asking workers in China to stay late until 9 p.m., which means workdays well over 12 hours. Workers are in fear of their jobs as Ding, who workers describes as volatile and constantly changes his mind on things. This past year, Ding hired a bunch of recent business school graduates to help him change the course of the company, and these graduates now serve as his direct reports and have been placed in charge of entire studios. People that just got out of school, don't know anything about games, they're just running the studio now. Crazy. So now a 50-year-old guy is having a bunch of Zoomers make his decisions for him. Just brilliant. The report says that the decision to close Uka Studio was decided long before they finished work on Visions of Mana, after Ding overruled other NetEase executives who greenlit the studio to begin with, saying he doesn't see the point in a studio that does work for hire. But what about NetEase's other investments in Japan? 3 years ago, they established a new studio with the game creator of the Yakuza series, Toshihiro Nagoshi. Nagoshi's studio has been quietly working away on a new game, only described so far as an adult drama. Sadly, this will be the only game they ever release. NetEase is giving his studio time to finish his game, but there will be no additional funding and no delays allowed. Once the game wraps up, the funding and studio are done. NetEase plans to spend no additional money in marketing and promoting the games either. I gotta imagine that morale is pretty bad at Nagoshi's studio. If this was common knowledge, if it wasn't, then it is now thanks to Bloomberg's reporting. I suppose it's good that NetEase is allowing them to wrap up the project as opposed to just closing them outright, but it will be even more of a struggle for these games to find an audience if they don't have a marketing budget. NetEase hasn't closed all of their external studios though. They have a handful around the world outside of Japan, but most are all working on big, massive live service style games from really high quality studios and master creators, they say, including an MMO set in the Warhammer universe from US-based Jackalope Games. I know Quantic Dream is also working on a Star Wars game, and I believe NetEase also has full or like a majority ownership in Quantic Dream as well. So it's a pretty scary time to be working at a team or studio that either is owned by NetEase outright or takes money from NetEase as an investment, because Ding is just pulling completely back on all of this, and trying to, I guess, right the ship in his mind. So, for all you developers affected by this, good luck. I'm sorry. End transmission.